Welcome back. In this lesson, we'll be crafting message sequences for actual LinkedIn outreach, which means we're one step closer to the real deal. I know it's been a lot of wax on, wax off so far, but I promise things are falling into place, and I hope you're excited about leveraging the work you've put in so far. We're going to cover some best practices that I've compiled throughout my 25-year career in sales and marketing. It stops short of being a formal copywriting course, but will help serve as its own kind of blueprint for filtering the copy that you generate for your LinkedIn outreach. You should download the PDF version, print it, check your messaging against it before posting for review and feedback in the group comments, and we'll go from there. Having headed an advertising agency for the better part of 2 decades, I've seen more than my fair share of copy. Most of it's pretty bad. In fact, I probably see one new, frustrating example every day. All they would need to do is refer to a list like the one in this lesson, and they'd likely improve their effectiveness threefold. I don't believe in tricky advertising. I don't believe in cute advertising. I don't believe in comic advertising. The people who perpetrate that kind of advertising never had to sell anything in their lives. All right, let's review 20 key ways you can draft copy for an effective LinkedIn messaging sequence. Here we go. Number 1, know thy audience. This is the quintessential marketing rule, so we'll start with it. We already covered this in our persona lesson, but remember that it was much more than an exercise to file away. The point is to always write everything for a specific persona. Don't propose marriage on day 1. This one's a staple in our industry, and I'm still amazed by how many 4-paragraph sales pitches I get in the email or LinkedIn message inboxes. And these are from someone who had just asked me to connect. Look, when you meet an interesting guy or gal, you typically start with light questions that help you get to know them, right? Think of your marketing the same way. Business development is a marathon, not a sprint, and if you move too fast, you're going to look like a creep and lose all the good opportunities. Slow down and focus the conversation on them. Your turn comes later. Always be helping. The old phrase was always be closing, but that doesn't work anymore. Provide value first, provide more value after that, and continue providing value for as long as you have a relationship. Even if a connection doesn't need you today, by providing some sort of value to help them with their job, you're building a pipeline for future opportunities and referrals. To sound authentic, be authentic. As the CIA has taught its spies for decades, the farther you stray from the truth, the harder it is to convince consistently. If you're running a scam business, you should get out of it. But if you offer real value to your customers, you should have plenty to talk about without making up facts that you'll have to prove and remember over time. Think very carefully about any intro that starts with the words I or we. Most businesses struggle with the concept of nurturing. When you focus your intro on yourself, you risk turning off your prospect before they ever get turned on. There are ways to begin your message with these words, but it's a fine line. Talk only enough to get them to talk. Rapport doesn't come from getting people to understand you. It comes when others feel like you understand them. Put your sales hat in the drawer, ask them about themselves, and then shut up and listen. Not only will they like you more, but the insights you pick up will help you deliver much better proposals and solutions, and that'll help you win more deals. Less is more. This is a bit redundant with good reason. It's a common mistake and it's a sale killer. We're so passionate about our products and our services and our value and our strengths and our experience, we can't help but communicate every last detail in the hope that it compels our prospects to understand just how great we really are. There's just one problem. They'll probably never read it. People read headlines and skip long text, so all you're really doing is diluting your message. Short subject lines, short headlines, short messages, short bios. Perfection is achieved not when there's nothing more to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. Simplicity sells. Too many people try to justify the value of their offering by making it sound more complex. Space-age polymers bonded with cold fusion and bleeding-edge extrusion techniques. But people avoid things they don't understand. Genius is the ability to make the complex seem simple. Unless you're selling lab equipment to nuclear physicists, dumb it down so that the value is obvious to a 10-year-old. People don't care about you or your company. They only care about how their lives will be improved by working with you. Keep 95% of your copy focused on the outcomes for your customers and not on the products, services, or team that will make it happen. Be personal and specific. When you try to write something that will resonate with everyone, it resonates with no one. Do not address your readers as though they were gathered together in a stadium. When people read your copy, they're alone. Pretend you're writing to each of them a letter on behalf of your client. Avoid industry jargon. Using trendy terms or big words won't make you sound smarter. It just gives the impression that you're trying to impress the prospect. Be solution focused. Always reference the problem you solve. Instead of, we provide M&A counsel, say, we help you get the maximum value from your transaction. Test everything. You become very close to copy when you write it. Show it to others, especially those who are or who resemble the persona for whom you wrote it. Step away and come back later. We tend to read our own copy with a specific voice in our head, but we easily forget that voice after a day or two. If you step away and come back to it later, you'll usually find that it comes across differently than what you had in mind the first time around. Don't fall in love with anything until you've gone through at least 2 days of revisions. If you get too attached, you'll be resistant to changes that will improve on what you have. Speak and advise as if you're talking to a direct report. Now, some people say, speak like you're with a friend or a family member, but I think ego can easily come into play in those scenarios. With a direct report, you already know each other's strengths, weaknesses, and experience, so the focus will be on the selfless, honest communication of the convo. Don't always strive for perfection. A lot of the copy you write for the program needs to sound authentic. Know when to ignore poor punctuation or drop the capitalization so that your real intent comes through. Be confident. Bees and prospects can smell fear. When you feel like you're asking prospects for a favor by talking to you, your copy will reflect that and be timid and needy. If you really believe you can help a prospect, your copy will illustrate the value that you provide. I go into every new business opportunity with an attitude of, let's prove that this lead is a good fit. At my agency, I commonly tell prospects that I don't think they're ready for our services, or we don't really specialize in the services they're requesting. I'd be happy to make a referral though. Or that based on my experience, I just don't think that their intended strategy is going to be successful, or any other conflict that might keep us from being a good fit. By showing prospects that you're picky about who you'll work with, they'll drop some of their defenses, trust your input more, and oftentimes start trying to sell you on working with them. Avoid exclamation points and the phrases that rely on them. It's easier to sell with facts and figures than with adjectives and coercion. Drama is great for fiction, but there's a reason good documentaries can compel without embellishment and narrated emotion. As the saying goes, instead of raising your voice, improve your argument. Using exclamation points and all caps for that matter shows that your facts don't support themselves. Save pleasantries until the end. You're not texting your mom here. You're interrupting a professional in the middle of their workday. Peers understand this and show respect for the other's time instead of trying to small talk their way into a real conversation. First, state your message briefly. If it's compelling enough for them to read to the end, that's where you might insert your, hope you're having a great week. With these guidelines in mind, let's transition into the task of forming your LinkedIn message sequence. Now, you're about to see exactly what I've been talking about when it comes to holding off on your sales talk until later in the nurturing process. Again, this approach is probably not what you've heard before, but any program that encourages you to lead with a value proposition or the results you tend to generate is outdated and unlikely to ever produce the success that we've seen with the missing link. Early messaging should be all about developing rapport by providing value and getting to know the prospect. Later messaging will take us into the stages where we'll start talking about ourselves. It's a macro version of the give and get tactic. What we're going to cover today is the proven LinkedIn outreach sequence in your blueprint. As you can see from the example, it follows a 6-step structure that spans a 3-month duration. So over the span of 3 months, you'll typically send 6 different messages to each prospect on LinkedIn. However, you're likely to generate a few strong sales opportunities well before the end of that period, since some prospects will follow a fast-track path that we'll describe more later. Our standard LinkedIn sequence follows this structure. Invitation to connect. Connection thank you. Unaffiliated resource tip. Tap group discussion. Internal resource tip. And request for response. Let's go through these in order, beginning with a connection request example in your blueprint. The purpose of the invitation to connect is obvious, to convince the prospect that you're worth connecting with. The hurdle is that with so many spammy scammers sending connection requests these days, many people are apprehensive about connecting with anyone they don't know. Therein lies the first challenge, cutting through the noise and coming across as legitimate and non-threatening. In other words, your invitation needs to demonstrate high value and low risk. So how do we do it? We follow our VIP format and our LinkedIn copywriting guidelines. We don't talk about our products or services at all. We don't mention the results we generate at all. We provide a simple, good reason why it makes sense to connect. Then we leave the ball in their court. As always, let's examine some examples of how not to write an invitation to connect. I was looking at your profile on LinkedIn and started looking at what Distill is up to. It looks like you have a successful business that you've worked hard to grow. It got me thinking, and I wanted to introduce myself, as I've worked with a lot of business owners like you, trying to grow from a 7-figure business, or fast approaching, helping them navigate successfully to an 8-figure business. So what's wrong with this cold outreach? I, me, I. Talking way too much about himself. IPA, the invite itself is already pitching me. It's too long. It sounds needy and I'm bored after the first sentence. Now let's review a few invitations to connect that have worked well. Hi Bob, would you be willing to connect so that I can pick up more of the CU growth retention insights being shared in your network? I'm a CU marketing enthusiast focused on finding clever and effective strategies being used inside and outside of the industry. Jesse. Lisa, it appears that we're both in the e-com space and both PayPal merchants. I'd like to connect for occasional questions and insights if you're up for it. John. Hi Jen. You're in an interesting gig that I'm trying to learn more about. Willing to connect with a small business owner down the street and share occasional insights? Promise not to bug you. Tom. Brent, saw your name on John Taylor's profile and figured we could connect to trade thoughts here from time to time if you're game. Tracy. Another consideration is that LinkedIn enforces a strict 299 character limit on your invitation to connect, and you'll need to account for varying name lengths. I don't consider this limit a negative since it forces you to be brief, as you should be. Now, as you experiment on your own, you may be tempted to get really personalized with your scripts. We've experimented with that ourselves, looking at each profile and trying to find some personal angle or tidbit that we can use to make it 100% clear that we did our homework. Hey man, I see you lived in ABQ for a few years, did a stint there myself. Indy must be a welcome break from that heat. Anywho, let's connect. It's even relatively quick and easy to do this based on LinkedIn search filters like past company or school. Nevertheless, one of the most popular tactics right now is to do exactly this kind of personalized message. So not only does it take a lot more time, but your message rarely ends up sounding more authentic or compelling unless there truly is some notable connection, such as being Eskimo brothers. One valid reason to do this is if you have a very limited customer pool, like CFOs of automobile manufacturers. Because you won't have to reach out to too many businesses, you'll absolutely want to prioritize quality over quantity, and I'd encourage you to do at least a day or two of homework for each connection so that you can request custom each time. But even in those cases, you'll still need to dig much deeper than the standard information available in a LinkedIn profile. One unique thing about the invitation to connect is that it provides the clearest feedback on effectiveness. If people connect, your message must be good. If they don't, you have work to do. Because of that, we typically create multiple invitation to connect scripts and then track to see which ones are most successful. More on that in an upcoming lesson. If we do write an effective invitation, we'll start seeing our new connections adding up in our LinkedIn network. And when that happens, we'll need a message that acknowledges the new connection. This is the connection thank you. This message is your first and best chance to show your new connection that they didn't just make a huge mistake. Set the tone for months of respectful communication by sending a very simple thank you message. Just for fun, let's have a look at an invitation to connect and follow-up thank you message that I got from a new connection just a few weeks ago. It's a fabulous example of how your message should not read. Hey Phil, I'm looking to grow my network with fellow marketers. Hope to connect here on LinkedIn. Cheers! All right, so far so good. I'll give it a go. Thanks for connecting. I love to connect with fellow marketers and compare notes. Quick bit about me. I'm now the VP of Marketing at Company X. We use big data and AI to help businesses grow. Our concept is simple. Find the best people to target them where they're most likely to see it and engage, score how interested they are, let you know when and how you should contact a lead. We work with agencies to help them acquire new clients. Our system is actually scary good at it. We also do work with agencies who have very specific data targeting needs for their clients. If you have a particular niche, we can often refer certain clients to you as well. Would be happy to chat more. Here's a link to set up a quick demo of our product and chat about partnership opportunities. Ah, snap! This is a textbook bait and switch move, where a user sends an innocuous invitation to connect, only to pounce on the acceptance with a crazy sales pitch. Now that we've covered the connection messaging, Let's jump into your blueprint and walk through the 4 follow-on nurturing scripts. In the first of our 4 follow-on scripts, we're going to send out an unaffiliated resource tip. This is unaffiliated, meaning it's not something that we've created. It's not something owned by our company. Instead, it's a third-party resource. And by sending out a third-party resource, it's clear that we're not trying to promote our own business yet. We're not trying to feature our business, promote our business, or otherwise sell to people in any way, shape, or form. By sending out a third-party resource, we're showing people that we can be trusted to share valuable information with them. In the example that we have here, we would say, John, one of my connections just published this infographic on average ROI of digital marketing channels. Great resource if you have clients and prospects who ask you for typical rates when you're pitching tactics. Link below, but let me know if you'd like me to email you the PDF. You can subscribe to her feed on that page, by the way. She posts lots of good stuff. Hope the week's going well, Phil. And then a link to the URL. Okay, in the tap group discussion, this is where we can actually bring people into the conversation from the custom tap group we've created. Again, we're not pitching our own business at this point, so this is a very selfless recommendation. Lisa, there's a recent discussion on the Colorado Agency Leaders LinkedIn group. Best channels for recruiting new agency employees? The group is invitation only to keep out the riffraff, but I'm one of the admins and I'll invite you now. Hope to see you add your perspectives from time to time. Phil. In the third follow-up script, an internal resource tip. This is where we actually do get to take a document or a resource, maybe it's a PDF, a white paper, a calculator, anything that we've created internally. And this will be the first time that we actually reference our business in any way, shape, or form. So we're starting to nurture or warm the lead up. Bob, not sure if you follow my daily vlog, but in today's episode, I got to interview Gary Vee about his 1-year predictions for agencies like ours. It's only 12 minutes, but I can email you a PDF of the transcript if that's preferred. This one references a quick video that we would have made, but it could just as easily be a recorded webinar or any of the PDF resources that we just mentioned. In our final message, request for response, we try to take care a little bit of all of those people who are maybe non-responsive throughout the entire process, and that's going to be a common scenario. People might read the things you send over, they might not, but even if they do, they may not actually reply. This is where we actually ask them explicitly to reply. Hey Jennifer, I'm under deadline in an article or report on the top challenges in 2019 for agency leaders. Would you be interested in answering a 1-question survey and/or being featured with a photo or quote for the article? Need it within 2 weeks. Thanks in advance, Phil. So again, this one goes beyond the passive information sharing and asks them to actually reply. So we're trying to push that conversation forward, but you'll notice that the wording we use here makes it very easy. We're not asking them to come in for a focus group. We're not asking them to write an article. We're asking them to do something very simple, which is answering a 1-question survey and maybe offering them the ability or the option of being in the article with a photo or quote. This kind of appeals to the ego of the recipient in the sense that a lot of people would love to be quoted in an article. And then need it within 2 weeks lets them know that there's actually a little bit of time here. If somebody doesn't read this for 3 days, as some people don't with their LinkedIn messages, this lets them know that, hey, we've actually still got time to work on it. It should minimize any responses that you get where people say, sorry, I'm under deadline this week, or I'm actually on vacation for the next 4 days. This gives you flexibility in when they can actually answer. You'll notice the recommended gap or delay between each script. It's these delays that result in our 3-month ramp duration for completing the typical LinkedIn sequence. So why do we send messages in intervals of multiple weeks? Because we don't expect you to do your LinkedIn sequence all week long. Our cadence allows you to perform LinkedIn outreach 1 day per week, leaving the other days for addressing replies from contacts, performing other tasks that we'll cover later, and of course, for performing all of your other job duties. You might also be wondering why we typically leave 3 weeks between each outreach. The answer to that question is simple. First, we don't want to be pests. When you requested a connection with your prospect, they trusted your implication that you'd respect the relationship. If you turn around and start cluttering their inbox with messages that they can't even keep up with, you'll get ignored or booted before you ever get a chance to talk business. Second, time flies. If you've ever had a friend or coworker go on a 2-week vacation, and when they returned you thought, holy crap, has it been 2 weeks already? Then you know how frequent a weekly or even bi-weekly message cadence might feel to the prospect. Don't rush it. It's important to mention that the more engaging and responsive your sequence is, the greater the chance that your connections will break out of it by replying to your messages with questions and thoughts of their own. While that does add some complexity, it's also the whole idea, to get prospects interested in having real conversations. We'll cover how to handle these scenarios in a future lesson. Now that you're beginning to see how the LinkedIn sequence works, you may be wondering why we can't just speed the whole process up. Why not just be direct? And in the connection request, outline our value proposition, offer our sales pitch to new connections, and see who's interested. Maybe our connection rate would be lower, but we could blow through a higher volume of contacts in a shorter period of time. So maybe we'd still get more leads, calls, and meetings, right? Remember that not all prospects are ready to buy on day one. The missing link, as you'll see in an upcoming lesson, still has a fast track for those connections with immediate needs. But easing into conversations helps establish trust and value that build a more robust sales pipeline. Instead of the traditional sales model of checking in again next quarter, the missing link builds relationships and familiarity that compel your prospects to reach back out to you. So now it's time for your homework. Go into the LinkedIn Scripts tab of your Blueprint spreadsheet and take a stab at populating some of your own content. You'll have to think carefully, of course, about some of the resources that you have available. This is going to be a time-consuming exercise for you, and it's absolutely critical that you post all of your drafts into the group comments. We'll be happy to provide feedback and help you dial it in. Be sure to offer multiple options for the connection request so that you can get feedback on those and test them accordingly. Once you're done, and we've narrowed these down, I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.